They say football is a game measured in yards and seconds, but the moments that last forever can't be contained on a scoreboard. They live in the silent spaces between the whistles, the tears in a player's eyes, the roar of a city that finally feels whole again, the hush of a crowd when a man's life hangs in the balance. These are the stories that remind us the NFL is not just about winning, it's about being human. One evening in December 2003, Brett Favre stood under the lights in Oakland, holding back a storm of grief that most men would never be expected to face on a football field. Just a day earlier, his father, his first coach, the man who taught him how to throw a spiral, had died of a sudden heart attack. Favre could have stayed home, could have wrapped himself in the privacy of his loss. Instead, he suited up, stepped into the huddle, and played the game of his life. 4 touchdown passes in the first half, over 300 yards before halftime. His teammates knew they were witnessing something that transcended sport. Every time Favre uncorked a pass into the California sky, it was as if he were sending a message to his father, "I'm still here. I'm still yours." Sometimes, heartbreak doesn't wait for the final whistle. In 1971, Chuck Hughes of the Detroit Lions jogged back to the huddle after a routine play. He never made it. Right there on the field, before a stadium of fans, Hughes collapsed. For a moment, no one seemed to understand what was happening. Then the trainers sprinted out, and the crowd fell into an eerie silence. The reality of it settled over everyone watching. A blocked artery had stopped his heart. To this day, he remains the only player to die on an NFL field. For the men lined up across from him, it was the harshest reminder imaginable that beneath the helmets and shoulder pads beat hearts as fragile as anyone's. Years later, the NFL would witness a different kind of collapse, one that unfolded not in an instant, but over a lifetime of collisions. Junior Seau was a warrior, a linebacker whose energy was contagious, whose passion elevated everyone around him. But after his retirement, the darkness came. In 2012, Seau took his own life. When doctors examined his brain, they found severe damage from years of concussions, a disease called CTE that was beginning to come into the public eye. His death became a turning point, forcing a league built on toughness to reckon with the price some men pay for playing the game they love. Yet sometimes in the same stadiums that hold such sorrow, there is also redemption and healing. When Hurricane Katrina tore through New Orleans in 2005, it left behind ruin that stretched far beyond the floodwaters. Homes destroyed, families scattered, a city's spirit crushed under the weight of tragedy. However, the Saints kept the lights on, both figuratively and literally. When they finally returned to the Superdome, something remarkable happened. On the very first drive, special teams player Steve Gleason burst through the line and blocked a punt that was scooped up for a touchdown. The roar that followed wasn't just about football. It was an exhale, a collective moment when a city finally felt hope again. Gleason's block became a symbol that even the worst devastation couldn't break New Orleans' soul. At other times, the heartbreak is encapsulated in a single step. That yard became the most famous in Tennessee Titans history, and the image of Dyson stretching toward the goal line is burned into the hearts of fans everywhere. It was the perfect snapshot of football's cruel magic, how victory and heartbreak can live side by side, divided by inches. Not all emotional moments come from tragedy. Sometimes they're born from defiance, from a refusal to let circumstances dictate what's possible. In 2014, Eric Berry was a Pro Bowl safety for the Kansas City Chiefs when doctors delivered the news no athlete ever wants to hear: Hodgkin's lymphoma, cancer. He could have walked away, and no one would have questioned him. Instead, Berry fought with everything he had, enduring chemotherapy and months of uncertainty. Less than a year later, he ran back onto the field. His first interception after returning came against the Steelers. As he jogged to the sideline clutching the ball, the stadium erupted in an ovation that was about so much more than football. It was a celebration of life itself. And then there are moments when the game seems almost too heavy to bear. In 2007, Washington safety Sean Taylor was shot during a home invasion and died days later. He was just 24. The following Sunday, the Redskins defense lined up for their first play with only 10 men on the field, deliberately leaving Taylor's position empty. The opposing offense declined the penalty. It was one of those moments when competition gave way to compassion, and a stadium full of rivals came together to honor a young man whose life ended far too soon. Sometimes sorrow and inspiration collide in the same story. Pat Tillman's journey began with a football contract most people would dream about. He was a starting safety for the Arizona Cardinals with millions in guaranteed money. But after September 11th, Tillman felt called to something bigger. He left his career to enlist in the Army, ultimately deploying to Afghanistan. In 2004, he was killed by friendly fire, a loss that sent shockwaves through both the NFL and the country. The Cardinals retired his jersey, named a plaza in his honor, and established a foundation to support veterans and their families. His sacrifice became a lasting reminder that some callings are even greater than the game itself. When the focus shifts back to the field, the heartbreak often comes when players are forced to confront the end before they're ready. In 1994, Sterling Sharpe was one of the NFL's most dominant receivers when a neck injury ended his career overnight. He was 29. Years later, Sharpe reflected that football had been his entire identity. Losing it felt like losing himself. Yet, he rebuilt, finding purpose as an analyst and mentor. His story is a testament to resilience, the ability to keep moving forward when your dreams collapse in an instant. No less wrenching was the moment in 2001 when Drew Bledsoe took a crushing hit that lacerated a blood vessel in his chest. As he lay in a hospital bed, the Patriots turned to a backup quarterback no one had thought much about, a skinny kid named Tom Brady. What followed changed the NFL forever. Brady led the Patriots to a Super Bowl, and Bledsoe's injury became the sliding door moment that launched a dynasty. For Bledsoe, watching someone else fulfill the destiny he'd imagined was bittersweet beyond words, a reminder that in football, just as in life, sometimes your story becomes the backdrop for someone else's legend. Off the field, no tragedy was more shocking than the night Henry Ruggs climbed behind the wheel after drinking, driving his Corvette at 155 miles per hour. The crash killed a young woman and her dog. Ruggs survived with minor injuries but lost everything: his freedom, his career, his place in the NFL. In a league built on redemption stories, this one couldn't be rewritten. The weight of one terrible choice became a burden he and everyone who knew him would carry forever. Other stories, though, speak to the boundless power of hope. In 2022, J.J. Watt thought he was experiencing routine discomfort. A doctor's exam revealed atrial fibrillation, an erratic heartbeat that could have killed him. An emergency procedure shocked his heart back into rhythm. Most people would have needed weeks, if not months, to recover. Watt was back on the field days later, determined to keep playing the game that had given him everything. When he announced his retirement later that season, fans and teammates alike knew they were saying goodbye not just to a player, but to a living example of how courage can look as simple as showing up. Sometimes the courage comes in smaller, more personal moments. Noshan Moreno was just a running back standing on the sideline during the national anthem, but when the camera caught the tears streaming down his face, they weren't tears of sadness. They were gratitude, pure and overwhelming. In that moment, millions of fans saw what the game meant to him. It was a rare glimpse into the heart of an athlete whose love for football was as big as his talent. The most recent example of how fragile life can be occurred in 2022 when Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin collapsed after what appeared to be a routine tackle. His heart had stopped. As trainers and doctors fought to revive him, players from both teams knelt together in prayer. The stadium fell silent. For 9 minutes, the world held its breath. When Hamlin finally began to recover, it felt like a collective miracle. Weeks later, when he walked back into the Bills facility, the cheers were as loud and emotional as any championship celebration. And sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones no one sees coming. Brock Purdy was the very last pick of the 2022 NFL Draft, a throwaway pick, a footnote. But when injuries sidelined the 49ers' starting quarterbacks, Purdy stepped in. In his first full game, he faced Tom Brady, and he won decisively. As the final seconds ticked off the clock, cameras panned to Purdy's father in the stands, wiping tears from his face. All those years of doubt and sacrifice were finally worth it. A kid no one believed in had become a hero, and a father's pride had never been so visible. These moments, some heartbreaking, some inspiring, are why football endures. It's never just a game, it's 1,000 stories. each one a testament to the fact that behind every helmet is a human being fighting battles no one else can see. And whether it ends in victory or tragedy, every snap holds the possibility of something unforgettable.